本集节目由 SAT Knowledge 知识卫星赞助播出。多数人做笔记只是单纯把资料记下来，过一阵子就会发现这些笔记根本派不上用场，因为光是记录无法让知识真正内化。笔记的目的呢，应该是帮助思考，把让你困惑或者想追问的念头互相串联起来，形成一套知识体系。如此一来呢，过去的学习才能被有效的累积，而不是听过就忘。这样的做法正好是卡片和笔记这套方法的核心精神。在 AI 时代，答案随手可得，但真正有价值的洞见仍然需要仰赖人类的直觉、经验还有创造力。既然如此，那我们该如何锻炼这种思考能力呢？深刻艾伦斯的卡片盒笔记思考术这堂线上课值得你参考。这门课程呢，是由全球畅销25万本的卡片盒笔记一书的作者 Sönke Ahrens 主讲。他将带你将输入转化成你的观点，教你拆解知识、组合想法，更提供4种使用情境，让你依照自己的需求轻松套用卡片和笔记，不只大幅提升学习效率还有成果，也能节省未来整理笔记的时间。募资期间享有限时优于38折的优惠，结账时输入折扣码大人学卡片盒6个字，还能再折350元。欢迎点击节目下方的资讯栏了解更多课程资讯。Hello， 欢迎收听大人的 Small Talk， 这是大人学的 Podcast 节目，我是 Brian。前阵子看到这个 OpenAI 的老板这个Sam Altman， 他有一场演讲，因为他最近生了小孩嘛，然后记者就问他说，你希望你的小孩好像是女儿长大之后要学什么东西，你会教他学 coding 吗？结果这个奥特曼他说他一定会让他女儿学最重要的一件事情，就是如何学习新知识。这个是非常重要的一个概念。那学知识呢，我们从小到大就怎么样背课本嘛，然后抄笔记嘛，对不对？然后反复的背诵嘛，这是我们学习的方法。等于是传统的方法是把我们的大脑当成 hard drive， 当成硬碟在处理，这显然很没效率。好，所以现在呢，大家各行各业领域的专家都说，你一定要建立一个个人的知识体系，好，知识系统，这非常重要。你有了个人的知识体系，你才能形成最重要的什么观点，好，跟这个洞见，这样才能跟 AI 凸显出 AI 不一样的价值。你跟 AI 比算力、比记忆，你永远比不过。那这个今天呢，坐在我这边旁边的这位来宾呢，不知道大家认不认识他哈？他是这个领域建立知识体系这领域的大专家。好，他是来自德国，好，他的名字叫 Sönke Ahrens， 好，希望我念对哈 ，Sönke Ahrens。然后他是德国非常有名研究者，也是一本在台湾非常畅销，事实上在全球都非常畅销的书，叫做《卡片盒笔记法》的原作者来到我们节目当中。那今天呢，我们就来跟他聊一聊，请他分享一下关于怎么样做深度思考，还有怎么样建立我们刚刚讲的个人知识系统，请他听听看他有什么洞见。好，那今天的节目呢，我们会尽量用英文来做访谈，那我会尽量用中文帮大家摘要一些重点。那不过不用担心，好，如果不熟悉听英文的，下面我们都有字幕，好，可以做参考。Hello, Zong, welcome to our show.Thank
you, Brian, for having me.
You wear many hats. You're a researcher. You're also a best-selling book author, right? So could you give us a quick overview about your journey and your current focus?
Sure. Let me give you a quick short answer and a slightly longer answer. So I taught at university philosophy of education for the longest time. And that's where my research hat was on. And then I spent some time coaching. And then the book, How to Take Smart Notes, kind of distracted me from all of that. So I started coaching on note-taking. And now currently I'm almost back focusing on writing the next book.
Okay, awesome.
So the slightly longer answer is that there's one recurring theme to all of that. And that might be very familiar to you as a consultant. And that is figuring out the right questions. So in research, I wrote my PhD on epistemology, but it was actually about trying to figure out the better question than I proposed to my supervisor. Then in coaching, you know that probably very well. And it's something my therapist teacher, so I studied a little bit systems therapy, and he explained to me that clients don't come with questions. They come with answers disguised as questions. And your job is to figure out what the better question is.
Right.
And I think it's one of these pieces of wisdom you always come back to. They kind of stay with you because you think it's easy to understand. But then with more life experience, you realize how much there is to this piece of wisdom. Couples therapy, people come usually with a question, how to fix my spouse. And the therapist's job is to figure out what the actual problem is. And when it comes to learning, we tend to ask, how do we not forget what we learned? And the better question, what research points to is, well, probably we don't forget at all. And the question is, how can we retrieve what we have somewhere on our mind? And that puts research on a completely different path. And I'm fascinated in all I do with the changes, slight differences in questions can make. And I think that's what a consulting job like you do makes it so fascinating.
Sönke 他讲了一下他的背景哈，他除了是大家知道他是作家嘛，畅销书作家，其实他是德国一间大学的教授，他的专长领域是叫做这个education philosophy, that's your focus, right? 他是这个叫做什么教育哲学。好，他其实是谈的教育更深层的一个理论。不过他说他这几年比较 focus 在做这个 coach 跟 consultant 啊，他也说了跟我的职业类似哈。那他的这个他讲了一个很有趣的点哈，他说我们大部分人都在想怎么去解决问题，然后我们大部分人想是怎么去收集这些问题的答案。可是他的研究领域不太一样，他在帮助大家怎么问对问题。然后怎么把这些不是去记忆这些资讯，而是把这些资讯变成有效的洞见，这是他这几年更专注在研究的东西。好，蛮有趣的，我们后面再多问他一些问题哈，这个看看他是怎么样去看待知识这件事情。Okay, the second question I want to bring out is now we live in the AI and age of AI and instant information, right? So, but it seems that the true insights is rarer than ever. So in your opinion, why has deep thinking become such a challenge for most of our modern professionals?
I think when it comes to AI, we all are new to this space. I think nobody really has a definite answer to what is happening. I think that's true. To get that out of the way. But what I feel is that, especially in academia, we still live in a pre-AI setup. And we measure students' success by things AI already can do better. So there is a big incentive for students to cheat and to use AI to write the papers and so on. But I don't think it's about AI is encroaching on our thinking space. We need to figure out what humans can generally do better. And I believe there will always be something like the last mile, which is maybe based on intuition, which is not some gut feeling, but some form of embodied experience. You can only train when you really engage with a topic. Something like creativity. And creativity is also not something that falls from the sky, but can be trained. And as Steve Jobs said, it comes from connecting things. So we can practice that. And then deep thinking, as you mentioned, that also requires a deep engagement with knowledge. And using AI in a bad way means to circumvent all these struggles where you engage deeply and you struggle a bit with the topics. So you're not training what we are really good at and what AI cannot replicate. And that is probably the risk at the moment. But if we manage to train what we are best at, we can use AI to leverage this last mile. And this is what I spend some time now thinking about, how we can set ourselves up in a way that we do not give in that easily to the temptation of circumvent this deep understanding, these struggles with topics where you wrestle with questions, but to keep ourselves focused on that. Because when the landscape changes and we are not incentivized to use AI to circumvent thinking, this last mile, these 10-20% of human input, which we can leverage with AI, that is where the value is. And so now training for the scenario where we can distinguish ourselves by being better in this last 10-20%, I think that's crucial. That's where the value lies.
我刚刚问他一个问题，真的是我这些年来一直想了解的哈，就是我们活在一个资讯爆炸，还有现在 AI 又出来的时代，可是你会发现大家每个人都知道的很多，然后也会查一查就知道很多事情的答案，可是你会发现真正还是那些少数人，然后他拥有独特的观点跟洞见。那到底是怎么回事？为什么我们资讯越多反而没有产生洞见呢？那刚刚这个 Ahrens 他说了一个点哈，我觉得蛮有道理。他说我们人类啊，真正最强的不是去计算，也不是去背东西，而是人类跟 AI 相比，我们有所谓的直觉。好，也就是说我们讲不出道理，觉得就是有一个感觉就应该是这样子。第二个，我们人会有创意，好，我们会拼拼凑凑。这个在脑袋中爆发一些以前不存在的东西，好，会去想象，会去创意。这个还有就是我们很容易把不相关的东西去连接起来，好，连接起来产生一个新东西。像他讲的直觉、创意跟连接，这个东西其实是人类独有的能力，而是电脑不擅长的。可是我们传统的教育或是一些写笔记啊，这些技术方法论，好像不太去强调这些东西啊，怎么发挥直觉创意或是去连接，反而都是叫我们背东西。所以这是为什么我们现在很担心 AI 好像会干掉我们。那所以他的研究就是 focus 在专注在教我们怎么去连接不同的东西，怎么去从这些连接的资料中找出新的创意、新的启发，甚至是提升我们的直觉。好，所以他觉得这个才是未来，不管我们用什么新的学习方法，或是我们要接受新形态的教育，都要强调这些点，而不是像以前那样去背诵、去记忆、去计算。好，这是这点倒是蛮有用的。我们可能这是一个怎么讲，整体改变方向的一个学习方式。
I didn't understand a word, but I believe the summary was better than the original answer.
他说他听不懂我的中文，他觉得我讲的比他好，很幽默。所以谁说德国人不幽默？OK, so 我们慢慢再继续谈哈。我们节目一开始有讲到一个 knowledge system， 所以我现在要问他一个相关的问题哈。So I think most of the audience and myself is really curious about your personal workflow. Okay, so you as a prolific writer and researcher, so how do you structure your own knowledge system to manage all your idea, all the data you collected?
Yeah, I stole it from a professor, a German professor of sociology I admired for his theory. And I later stumbled upon his secret to his productivity and ability to write such complex theories and works. And that is what nowadays, even in English, is called the Zettelkasten system. And it's a tool from the pre-digital era. So it raises the question, why do we need a tool from the pre-digital area for the area of AI? And I believe it has a secret to it, and that is it focuses you to, or it allows you to focus completely on your own personal deep understanding of a topic. Because there is one golden rule, and that is when you write a note that you want to keep forever. So you have a particular kind of note that you connect with other permanent notes, with the idea of not just collecting knowledge, but to compound it, because the sum of the notes is way more than just the collection of notes themselves. So it focuses on our own understanding, and we force ourselves by writing notes ourselves and explaining ourselves in our own words, like you do with the summary, to really understand what we heard, what we read, and what we think. And that prevents the big risk of AI, and that is circumventing understanding. And we all know that. So when we hear a lecture or we hear a podcast, we nod and think, yeah, that makes sense, that makes sense. And then we might hear a different lecture, a different podcast, and might not even realize that there are contradictions between these two pieces of information we heard. Or when we are asked to give an account, so what was it about? We suddenly realize we struggle to give account of that. And teachers know that best, that you really only understand a topic when you're able to teach it yourself. And you only realize that you understand something when you try to rephrase it in your own words. So basically, it is nothing else than a note-taking system, but it is a note-taking system that forces you to stay within the realms of what you really understand and to build only knowledge up in this realm. So you don't put anything that is copy and pasted from the internet into it. You don't let AI generate something from it, which doesn't mean you can't leverage it with AI. You can use it freely. But at the same time, just expanding your thinking space, your personal thinking space, externally on notes, gives you so much more room to expand your thoughts than if you only rely on what you can hold in your brain, because our human brains are pretty small. And if you externalize it onto notes, you can expand this personal space. And I think in an age of AI, we need a huge personal thinking space to filter, sort information coming in, to deal with this kind of overflow. If we only rely on what we can hold in our short-term memory, we get easily overwhelmed. So I think it's a great tool to deal with the challenges of nowadays information space. And yeah, it's simple in its setup because it's all about adding new pieces of information explicitly to already existing pieces of information and thereby extending thoughts that are already there. So it's not about collecting stuff. It's about building something up. And we all know that compounding is a powerful law that always keeps us surprised. It keeps surprising us how much power there is in compounding instead of just collecting stuff. And there are very, very few note-taking systems that go beyond collections. And I think this is one of them. And it worked for many people. And for me, it's also a way to stay focused and not get easily distracted.
我刚刚问他的问题就是问他自己啊，我们很好奇他自己身为学者，又是老师，然后又是顾问，他是怎么建他自己的这个知识体系的哈？那他提到了这个，他很谦虚啊，他说他从别的地方偷来的这个方法。大家应该知道卡片盒笔记哈，卡片盒笔记呢，其实是在这个电脑发明以前，有另外一位德国教授发明的哈，可是这个 Sönke Ahrens 写了书之后，彻底把它发扬光大。那他很谦虚的说，他是借用这个教授的概念。那这个卡片盒笔记，他刚刚也简单的讲了一些概念。他说，人的这个大脑啊，其实是很有限的哈。短期记忆是很低的，这个你如果要有一个知识体系，我们传统的方法就是收集嘛，尽量看书嘛，塞到脑子里。可是这显然是不 work 的，所以他的方法是他有一套收集的系统，就是比如说听了一集 podcast 啦，上了一门课啦，看了一篇论文，不光是收集，他把它变成自己的话。然后他刚刚的英文，各位应该有听到，他一直强调一个观点叫 compound 就是把不同的东西融合汇整，然后形成新的东西，所以这个就是他用的一个方法。他不光是去一味的收集，像他刚刚也提到，现在大家很多他的学生都用 AI 产出了很多各式各样看似像样的报告，可是那些东西是没有用的，因为那些东西是 AI 产生的，它并不是你脑袋里真正的念头，而且这个compound 就是融合的结果，也是 AI 帮你融合的，不是你自己融合的。他说这个是不好的 knowledge system， 真正的 knowledge system 是你要用你自己的方式去解读你收集到的情报，然后把它做不断的连结完之后，它自然会产生一些新的观点跟认知，这些观点认知就可以帮助他写书啦，制作教材啦，或者是写论文啊，就是这样产出的，大概概念是这样。不过我想要再多问一些细节哈，这到底是怎么做的哈？Your book, which is How to Take Smart Notes. I really love this book. Actually, this book created huge buzz in Taiwan and, all other countries. It's very famous best-selling book. So, in simple terms, can you give us an idea what's the fundamental difference between this method and the traditional note-taking we learn in school? What's the major difference? Can you give us a quick example?
Sure.
How it works?
Well, first of all, it's built on the separation of different note types. And they are often conflated. Do you say that? When we confuse different categories?
Yeah. Kind of merge everything together.
Conflated? Is
conflated?
That the right?
Yeah.
Okay. So in the old note-taking systems, usually have different note types conflated together.
And make categorize, right? Put a tag. When we collect the traditional ways, we collect a lot of different notes.
Right.
We categorize that, put it in the different folder and name it.
Yeah, right? That is a top-down approach.
Top-down,
and the folder structure on a computer is built on that.
Exactly.
And that's okay for a moment, but when we think differently about a topic, when we actually learn something about it, it usually means we structure our knowledge differently.
Right.
And then we are stuck because we would have to reorganize everything. So the Zettelkasten works the opposite way. It works bottom up. And you start just adding pieces together until you see how categories form. And you give yourself an overview over a topic without hardwiring it into the system. So if your idea about how to structure a topic changes, you simply write a new note and write a new structure.
Okay.
The underlying connections, the underlying notes stay the same. And that got easier with digital systems.
Okay, I want to make sure I fully understand. The traditional way is actually hierarchy way, right?
Yes.
From the just like the structure, we store information in our hard drive.
Yes.
We have a root folder, subfolder, subfolder, like that. But your way is a little bit different. Actually, it's a huge difference. It's like network. right?
Yes, it's very rhizomatic, you could say. Yeah, it's very network-like. And you might think, oh, well, there's like hyperlinks on the internet. It's like a Wikipedia. But it's not, because a Wikipedia, the connections between entries are, they make sense, but they do not form a thought. So you have two Wikipedia entries and they are linked together, and that makes sense. But if you put 5 Wikipedia entries next to each other, nothing comes out of it. And in the Zettelkasten, if you have a new idea, you look what you have already built up. And then you see where a cluster has formed and how the new idea might add to this developing thought, with the idea that something comes out of it. So when you look in the original Zettelkasten of Niklas Luhmann, the professor I mentioned, when you compare his articles with note sequences within his Zettelkasten, you often see that almost a chapter is written in note sequences. And he didn't write them top down, which is something writers often fear, that you stare at the blank page and then you think, oh gosh, I have to write a chapter now. But you have a new idea and you think, okay, that might fit to one idea I already have. So you expand on that. And some time later, you realize, okay, something has been built up. And you have a note sequence that's already quite long. So you then decide to write on that, or give a presentation on that, or inform your colleagues about an idea you have. And you can draw from what you already have. You do not start from a blank page. You always start from something you have already built up. And insight, so because it's insight driven, it's driven by curiosity and what triggers your interest. Insight is defined by that you cannot plan for it. Insight comes, but you can make sure that it's more likely that it happens. And insight comes for the prepared mind. And if you have an idea and you don't know where it fits, you can now look up and look where it might fit. And often 2 pieces of information do not neatly fit together. But that only makes you think. So you expand on the thought and clarify your ideas and maybe explain differences on paper and thereby developing ideas. So as you said, it's not top down, it's bottom up. It's lively and a bit playful. Because you can play around with notes and see how they might fit, but you give yourself an account in writing, and that's key for understanding.
我刚问他说，他的这个所谓的卡片盒笔记法跟传统我们写笔记差在哪里啊？他讲了一个非常清楚也很简单容易懂的解释哈。他说我们传统去收集资料或是写笔记是所谓的由上往下。好，我举我自己的例子好了，比如说我是一个讲师嘛，那我今天这个从上往下很像我们电脑里面的资料夹哈，比方说我资料夹里面有分成这个管理的课程啊，是我准备的这些管理的资料跟管理的讲义，然后也有这个职场的课程。第一层就是管理跟职场，然后管理里面又有专案管理、流程改善，第2层，然后职场里面又分成转职、求职、天赋热情，然后最后你这个资料结构或是你的笔记本呢，就是从上往下一层一层的，然后这边会造成一个问题，因为它只适合储存资料，它不适合产出新的观点。举个例子，今天呢，我有一个想法，好，我想要谈一谈这个人生的风险。好，我要想要创办一个新的课程，这时候问题来了，我到底要从管理风险管理属于管理的资料夹去找资料呢，还是我要从职场的资料夹去找资料呢？你要不就是属于管理类，要不属于职场类，所以这个结构啊非常的死板，你很难从这个中间想出一些融合，好像我们刚刚讲 compound 去融合，产生一些新的观点。那它的方法就是很灵活，它是所谓的 bottom up， 就是今天我看了一部连续剧，我有一个想法，这个想法是人生很多风险，我就简单的把它记下来。明天我又看了一本书啊，他谈到风险管理需要做这个对未来的几率的预判。它每一个卡片都是一个 idea 而已，这些 idea 很零散，你甚至不用去归类，不用特别去归档，你只要稍微去注记这个 idea 跟什么有关，然后最后当你累积很多很多卡片的时候，互相就很密密麻麻各式各样的连接，它不是傻傻的从上往下一串，它是很多像我们大脑网络这样连接。然后有一天你今天想要写一篇文章的时候，他刚刚讲你就有一个这个知识库，里面有很多很多你过去收集来的 idea， 你只要从中抽取一些 idea， 把它重新排列组合，我也许就制作一篇课程，叫做人生的专案管理。这个就是不同的东西蹦出来的，因为传统的笔记法，你要不我的资料夹，要不就是管理学，要不就是人生，不会有一个人生的专案管理。它这个方法就很容易产出这种很有趣的洞见哈，所以这个很有意思，很有意思。我们再继续问下去哈，我们来问问他，对于一般上班族，这个可以到底做什么？哈，这种新的方法可以做什么 ？So for a typical office worker, why is having a personal knowledge system a must-have today?So how does it translate into we all care about a better career performance or a competitive edge? How does the personal knowledge system can help us?
I'm sure every knowledge worker or office worker needs a personal knowledge management system. But the moment you move up the value ladder and need to have original input,and need to make decisions based on long-term understanding of a topic and have to draw from experience over many years. I think you cannot do without externalizing some of your thoughts. Our brains are just not that good. And then, to my surprise, this system was written for students mostly and young researchers like myself back then, but it was picked up mostly by professionals. So when I offered coaching on that system, I got regularly calls from CEOs, managers, people who just had to deal with a lot of input and were sometimes frustrated, first of all, by reading a lot and forgetting a lot.
That's true.
And secondly, about being fully aware that if they take on a new project, they have worked on something similar before, but it's buried somewhere in the files, in the archive. They vaguely remember it, but wanted something that enables them to build more long-term projects, so that an individual project is more like a snapshot of an ongoing development, and they don't feel they have to start over with every new project. So I think it's uniquely equipped for people who make higher order decisions, who build up knowledge and experience over many years, and people who have a broad interest. So where it's not very narrow, but they draw inspiration from all kinds of topics. And then you can adjust it really to your needs. So a typical learner, a student, or someone who is new to a topic might put an emphasis on what I call literature notes, where it's more about giving an account of what you read or what you hear, and putting that into your own thinking space so you can expand with the knowledge what you know. Creatives might put more emphasis on what I call fleeting notes, where you quickly capture ideas coming in and you don't want to lose them, but want to make sure they feed into something where they can become projects, where they can become output. And then most knowledge workers in the professions probably put their emphasis on project notes, because they usually work in projects. And at the same time, they want to feed back into the reservoir of longer brewing ideas that might turn into newer projects and can inspire each other. So there is a lot of adjustment people make to the system. And I like that it's not a step-by-step, here's how you do it system, but more, here are the principles, here's what you need to understand, and now you can turn it into something truly your own. That's what I like about it.
我刚问他的问题是说，就是我们现在的上班族真的，我们又不是大学教授，对不对？我们又不是研究者，我们真的需要一个个人的知识系统吗？然后这个对我们职涯有帮助吗？哈，能加薪吗？这个是一个很现实的问题哈。那他提到了一点，因为我们所谓的现在讲的工作者白领哈，大部分都是知识工作者，甚至我觉得台湾现在很多蓝领他也是知识工作者，因为他必须收集很多很多的技术资讯哈，客户的资料。所以他讲到一个重点哈，当我们在职场里面，我们人人都是知识工作者，那你当然一定要有一个知识的系统啊，否则你怎么成为知识工作者？而且尤其是随着我们在职场里面的位阶越来越高，比如说本来我可能是个小工程师，我是个软体工程师，我的资料分门别类好好整理，都是软体开发的资料，可能还勉强足够。可是当你从一个软体工程师，你变成专案经理，你变成一个技术主管，你甚至变成部门主管，随着你的位阶越来越高，你开始会有很多很多不同领域的东西，很多很多跟你原来学的东西不一样的这些资讯会越来越复杂，所以你很难用传统的方式这个根目录、子目录再更下面的目录，这是不可能的。好，那他刚刚讲了，所以随着你如果你想要这个成为一个更厉害的知识工作者，你期待你在职场会越来越往上走，你会 cover 越来越复杂、越来越多元的东西，你是绝对需要一个非常灵活，而且会让你产生洞见这样的一个资讯系统。如果没有这样的系统，你几乎很难再往上走。这是他大概的意思哈。So, since you just mentioned about learning new stuff, right? So, I'd love to know your learning workflow. That's probably the most interesting topic I'm going to bring out today. So, when you tackle a brand new subject, okay, what's your learning framework? I believe you have a very efficient learning framework. And how do you go from zero to understanding, even as an expert?
I'm not sure about I don't consider myself as an efficient person, and I consider it a luxury that I don't have to be. The answer is I never start from zero. When I'm interested in a new subject, I'm looking what I already have and see how I can expand on that. And that's different since I started using the system than before. I think before I started with a brainstorming session or something captured my interest and then I would do some research on that. So it would be a more linear approach. And that's how research or learning is usually taught in school and university. So you start with an idea, then you do some research, then you do the reading and you do some summaries, then you come up with your own ideas and write about it. That's a pretty linear thing. And I think now, having the system in place, it changed completely. It's more an iteration. So when something captures my interest, it is usually because I already in the back of my head know it might connect to something I already have. And it might change my view on something. And that is interesting. So I look what I have. I try to add a new piece of information. I might realize, how I thought about it is probably not the right way to think about it. So I have to clarify it myself. And then I'm in the middle of it. And sometimes it means I need to do more research. I need to do more reading because I realize I don't have much knowledge about this way of thinking about it, or I realize I already have written a lot of it. So maybe it's time to explain it to someone else. So I might add it to a draft of a lecture I'm giving. And then I might realize, well, I can't find the answer I'm looking for in the literature. It doesn't get me anywhere. Even asking AI doesn't help me here. I haven't written it down. And then it's get exciting because that means I need to come up with the answer myself. And these are the moments I'm looking for, where I'm at the end of my wits, so to speak, where I don't know how to answer a question. And yeah, so it's not a step-by-step process. It's more an iteration, and it's always about connecting things that are already there. Yeah.
我刚刚问这个 Sönke 先生他自己是怎么学一个新东西，怎么从小白一直到了解甚至到专家。结果他说呢，他从来没有从零开始学过东西。好，这个倒是我愣了一下。这个他的意思是说，他的逻辑很清楚哈。他说他从来没有从零开始学过一个东西，因为他想学的东西一定是他过去曾经在脑海里有一些念头，他感兴趣，或者是跟他的专业或是跟他的工作有关的东西。好，所以呢，当他想要更深入了解这个领域的时候，通常他过去因为可能出现在他脑海过嘛，或是在他的工作中，或者在他的阅读范围中，所以他其实不是从零开始的，他是从中间开始的，也就是说，他一定以前在他的系统里面已经可能有一些片段的东西存在，然后他就透过这些连结，好，因为刚刚讲了，他的这个系统不是用目录的方式，而是横向各式各样的连结，所以通常他，比方他今天想学一个新东西，这个东西通常大部分时候在他的系统里面已经有类似的 idea， 已经有类似的念头，甚至已经有类似的资讯，他只要从这些东西重复的去延伸去发展，当然他可能也会用 AI， 也可能会阅读新的东西，可是他不是从零开始长。好，我们感觉好像要种稻才能结成果实，可是通常它这个田地里面已经有你可以想象说，它这个田地里面有各式各样的种子跟各式各样的养分，它只要去浇水，持续灌溉，马上就可以长出东西。那我们一般人是我今天要学日文，好像就从零开始，你什么都没有，这个当然效率比较差。这个点倒是我以前没有想过的哈。刚刚这个 Sönke 也点到了一个，大家应该有听到，他有特别讲到 linear 跟networking。linear 就是所谓的线性 ，networking 就是网络连接哈。什么意思呢？举个例子哈，我们通常以前传统在学东西，我们就拿教科书嘛，然后第一章看完看第二章，第二章看完看第三章，这就是 linear 线性的学习哈。可是他说现在这个时代可能有很多东西。线性学习并不是最好的方法，而是要网络学习。举个例子，这个像我自己好了，以前我做简报会一张一张一张，第一章做完，好，再像说故事一样，然后第二章要做什么给老板看，第三章要做什么最后做个总结。可是我现在用的方式，我不会这样子，我会用很多很多的便利贴，这些便利贴每个便利贴是一个单独的 idea， 然后今天我要去企业做个简报，我可能会把这些我以前学到的便利贴零散的拿出来，重新去排列组合，常常在里面可以发现一些洞见。甚至我以前在学生时代，我在准备考试，我以前是一页一页看完了才去考试，然后都考很烂。后来我发现，我不看教科书，我先去把考题一题一题试着去解它。这个有的解得出来，有的解不出来，然后我再回头，比如说我连续好几题讲这个三角函数，好，我都不会，我再回去翻三角函数到底背后的概念是什么。我自己发现这种网路状，当然不是完全说 linear 学习方法不好，而是说这种网路状的方式，有些时候更能快速有效率的解决我们当下的问题。这也是刚刚Sönke刚刚讲的哈，他的这个 knowledge system 其实非常强调网状的方式。那我记得这个伊隆马斯克也有类似的例子，他不是回到大学里面重新去念这个航太科学，因为他要做火箭嘛，而是他先思考 我今天目标就是要做出个火箭，然后他开始搜集火箭的引擎要怎么做，火箭的舰体要怎么做，好，要怎么发射，他去搜集这些资讯，哪些地方不足，他才深入去研究。我觉得有一点是反过来，好，我们以目标为导向，然后透过网路去抓取我们这个完成目标所需要的知识，而不是像傻傻的第一页看完看第二页，那个效率实在太差了。我觉得这个点其实蛮鼓励推荐大家的哈，你不一定要用卡片盒笔记法这个方法，可是这个学习的概念其实是相当重要哈，我自己也从中获益很多。
It's a good example. I might add a completely different example, and you can see if it fits or not. Because when it comes to learning, we might overdo it with efficiency, and often we need to look a little bit left and right to understand the topic we're working on, to see the differences. So you might study the marketing strategy for your industry, and you might be better off to study the marketing strategies for similar industries, to see the differences, to understand what works and what doesn't. And the most striking and most simple example, that's the opposite of rocket science, is small children learning to throw a ball into a basket. And there's a nice study done. So they taught two groups of little children to throw a ball into a basket 3 meters away. Simple enough task. And you might think the most efficient way to do that is to let them throw a ball into a basket 3 meters away. And one group did that. And they were fairly okay. They learned about it. But another group learned to throw a ball into a basket which is 2 meters away and 4 meters away. And never once they tried to throw a ball into a basket 3 meters away. And still, of course, I wouldn't tell the story if they weren't much better at throwing a ball at a basket 3 meters away. Because this is a little bit about differences and variation to which seems inefficient in the beginning, but it's actually, when you look at the outcome, the more efficient way. So I think we shouldn't overdo efficiency when it comes to learning, but keep in mind that looking left and right helps understanding what we're actually working on.
关于这个学习啊 Sönke 这个听完我讲完中文解释，我猜他可能听懂了哈，所以他又加了一个我觉得很有意思的例子啊。他说这好像是一个真实的实验哈。这个我们想要训练小朋友，丢一个球投进一个距离他3公尺的一个篮子里面。那第一组小朋友他怎么训练呢？就是把一个篮子放在3公尺，然后让这些小朋友去丢球去练习。那结果还 OK。另外一组小朋友他用了一个不同的训练方法，前面放了2公尺，好，我们刚刚讲目标是3公尺哦。第二组小朋友前面放一个2公尺距离的篮子，还有4公尺距离的篮子，让他们分别练习2公尺跟4公尺。结果反而后者不是刚刚好3公尺哦，反而这群小朋友这个训练的成果是更好的。所以他告诉我们说，人类是一个很有趣的动物啊，它不是机器人啊。你给他一个很单一、很精准的这个学习方式，比如说我想学化学，我就念化学书，其实他不一定真的学得好。你反而给他一些，他刚刚说left and right， 就是我想中文的意思应该是给他一些周边的知识，让他凝聚，自己在脑中去凝聚成一个他真正的目标，反而效果会更好。这个点还蛮有趣的哈，还蛮有趣的。所以像很多同学问我说，Brian 你当讲师好像做的还不错，你有没有受过讲师的训练？我刚好想到一个例子，其实我压根没受过任何讲师跟podcast 的训练。很多人问我说，你是不是有接受过主持训练？其实我跟大家说实话，我没有受过任何正规的讲师跟演说的训练。可是我常常这个说话，我常常写作，我常常思考，我常常跟我的这个周围的朋友啦、同学啦去解释事情。这些就有点像他刚刚的例子，我从来没有真正去当讲师，可是我受过很多周边的训练。等我真正有一天要当讲师的时候，我反而做的可能比一些只受过纯粹讲师训练的人可能也不差，甚至比他们好。我想大概是这样的概念。Another question I want to bring out to Sönke is for listener who want to upgrade their thinking process, or they want to embrace the deep thinking method. So what is the one immediate action they can take right after this show? Do you have any advice?
Of course. But first of all, to get that out of the way, it doesn't mean you have to reorganize everything you have. Because that's kind of off-putting for many people, because they think they have to build up this massive organization system first. It only means to do things differently from now on if you decide to go with the system. A practical first step, which I always recommend when I talk with clients, is take a break and look at what you decide to actually work on in the future, what you want to spend your time thinking about. Like a brain dump. Write that down on little notes. They won't become part of the system. Just get it out of your head and then look at it and then sort maybe 5, 6, 7 areas of interest. And then write the first notes on each of these topics. Maybe you have a subtopic, but don't overdo it. And try to explain to yourself on a small piece of paper, what's your best understanding of this problem at the moment? And maybe it's an open question, maybe it's your idea, how you would describe it. The idea is not to have something perfect, not at all. It's just to have a little bit of scaffold, which you then can hang new ideas onto. Because the whole system is about adding ideas to already existing ones. So you want to start with just a rough scaffold, and then you can go from there, one note at a time.
Okay. I want to make sure I fully understand your point. For example, I actually have a plan to develop a new online course for the young kids, telling them what is money. So I want to help them to learn the basic financial knowledge. Let's take that as an example. So now I have a little bit financial experience, but my progress for this online course is actually 0. So your suggestion is I should spend a little bit of time to write down a lot of different notes to collect all the ideas. Then I write another note to make everything connected. Is that true? Or you have better advice for that?
Well, in that particular case, I would say you already have decided on the project.
Right.
So there's no need to go through the bottom-up process. You write a project note with everything you already have on your mind. But as you mentioned, there are things you haven't figured out yet.
Right.
So you can use your permanent note section, the main section of your Zettelkasten, to think about these problems. So the first question would be, what are the problems? And we're back to the beginning of the interview. The first question is probably not the one you will end up thinking about. But I would go with you, if you were my client, through the process of, first of all, writing down what you already have so it doesn't get lost. And then getting to the points where you feel stuck. And trying to come up with a phrase that fits on a single piece of paper that might explain to yourself the problem you're working on. Maybe you haven't, like me, really understood what money is before we can explain it to children. Because it's not an easy question. Right. It's not something that every adult knows and only needs to find a way to explain it to children. But what makes the topic so difficult? That's probably a question I would start with. Why is it so difficult to explain someone what money is? Because it's obviously not showing them a banknote and they understand what money is. So that could be a first note. And then you can collect ideas and try to see how they might be a partial answer to it. And soon enough, you might have new connections that build onto that. And if that's sufficient for you to put in the course, you can transition and add it to your project note. So use the Zettelkasten only as your thinking space where you actually think about problems you yourself have, and use your project notes to just progress with the project. And if you don't need thinking and can do the project without the, without going through the extra step of figuring things out, just finish the project. There is no need for the system if you don't have a thinking problem. But if you have a thinking problem, it's good to have the system.
Okay. 我刚刚问他说，我拿我自己的例子哈，比如说我明年我想要尝试做一个新的课程，这个课程是教小孩子建立这个财商好金钱观。那他的建议是，就是你要把这个问题作为核心。那当然，平常我们会收集很多大大小小跟财商、跟小朋友教育有关的资料。可是我觉得他刚提醒了我一点的，就是你要问对问题很重要。我心中想到的问题是，我要怎么建立这门课，好让他很有帮助。可他倒是提了一个更好的问题，他说为什么把金钱解释给小朋友，我们要特别变成一个课呢？因为他的问题是跟小朋友解释金钱这件事情为什么特别困难？我觉得这有点打通我的点哈。其实开一个金钱的课不是问题，问题是你要针对小朋友。那这个问题呢，就点出了很多。金钱它是不是抽象的？金钱可能对小朋友的生活无关痛痒。金钱可能也许父母并不想让小朋友太势利，知道那么多金钱。这些点反而是我要去解决问题真正的盲点。然后我们就要从这些问题逐一去搜集这些资料，从中慢慢找到一些这门课未来可能会有的洞见。我觉得我真的还没从这个观点想过这个事情哈。所以他也是说，如果你今天有一个工作，比如说你待会儿要完成一份简报给你的老板，也许这个笔记方法卡片盒笔记也许不是那么有帮助，因为你已经知道你要做什么了，你也知道怎么做。可是他说这个方法特别适用于你还不知道你没有 idea， 你找不到洞见，怎么从这些既有的知识点中找出洞见。如果你是需要这样子的人的话，那这个他推荐的这种连结的方法就会非常非常的有效。其实刚刚这个 Sönke 在提的时候，他有提到一些专有名词哈。其实这个是比卡片和笔记法里面一些专业哈。这个我之前有用过，我觉得很有意思啊。不过让他来解释可能比较精准哈。Sönke, when you answered my previous question, you just mentioned about some interesting buzzword like project notes, permanent notes. Could you give us a quick overview about what that is? What's that all about?
Sure. So the main part of the Zettelkasten are the permanent notes, and they are called permanent because they're meant to be kept forever. So if you want to keep something forever, you want to be sure it's worth keeping. What you write on them is already phrased in a way that your future self can still understand what you meant. And that takes a little bit of effort. So you don't want to put everything on them, only selected ideas worth keeping. The idea is that the interconnectedness of permanent notes builds some kind of critical mass where ideas can spark new ideas and something happens inside, like a reactor. But that means you have to separate everything that is not worth keeping forever from it. And first of all, that's fleeting notes. These are just reminders of something we have in our head. So something we jot down on a piece of paper or make a voice memo on our phone or whatever is at hand. And usually we don't put the idea itself in writing, just a reminder of it. And at least to me, most of the ideas I write down this way are not worth keeping forever, but only a selected few. Literature notes are basically just what you gain from something you read and don't want to forget to translate it maybe into your permanent notes section. So you would go through them a second time and just look, is they worth translating into my own thoughts? Can they expand on something I have written down already? And then there are project notes. And that's when you already have a project on your mind and you know you want to explain children what money is. That's a project. And there are a lot of ideas you can write down that are important for that project, but might not be important for other projects. So you would keep them separate, and when the project is finished, you might put them into an archive or you throw them away, but it won't mess with your permanent note section. And what most people do when they not separate these type of notes is muddling them up, having maybe notebooks where you have to-do lists combined with great ideas that might get lost because they are buried in a lot of stuff that is not relevant for your future self. So that separating these types of notes is key for the system. Yeah.
Oh, I see. 这个 Sönke 刚刚提到这一套方法，好，我们今天大概只是简单给大家一些基本的概念。它其实把我们所有的笔记分成4种种类，有一种叫 fleeting note， 简单的说就是你刚好想到一个点子，或是看到一个什么有趣的东西，这个里面只是你生活中随手抓到的一些资讯，它本身不包含你的 idea， 也没有包含你的想法，只是把它记录下来。好，比如说我看到一个笑话，我觉得不错，它要做什么用？它也不是出自我的点子，就是觉得这个很有趣，就把它记下来。这 fleeting note。然后还有一个叫做这个文献笔记，简单的说就是我们看了一本书，或是摘录了某一篇文章里面的内容，我们怕以后忘记，所以先暂时把它记下来，或是一本出处哈，就是有点像 reference。然后呢，重点来了，你常常要回顾这些破碎的笔记，然后你会形成一个所谓的 permanent note， 就是永久性笔记。刚刚讲的那2种笔记，可能你看过之后，你不一定会常常使用，可是那个 permanent note 就真的是你的 idea、你的洞见、你的想法，你可以把它想象成这是你个人的创作的一部分。好，这些就是你一个最重要，经过精炼之后，你存在脑中的一些沉淀下来的想法。那如果你像我一样，比如说我今天要开发一个给小朋友的课程，我要完成这个东西，我要追踪这个案子的进度，我要追踪这个案子所有的讯息，我就会有另外一种笔记叫 project note。 这个 project note 呢，就是跟我要产出这个线上课有关的东西，我又再以这个为核心去连接。所以你会看到它这4种笔记啊，是在里面，它之前一直强调 compound connecting，就是这4种笔记啊，它都是你日常生活中，有些是你的想法产出，有些是你搜集来的东西，有些是你要解决的问题。它在这个系统里面，我会有一个非常科学系统的方法去交错，好，让你产出一个好的内容。所以这个方法其实想想还不能说听完这集节目你就会了，没那么简单哦。不过我觉得可以从这期节目开始，你可以思考一下，好，多去了解，你可以看他的书，待会儿我们也会聊聊他的课程。我觉得这个里面的学问会帮助你真的产出一些不一样的洞见。好，那最后我也想再问他，这个他最近有出了一个课程，好，我自己非常感兴趣，等了好久，因为之前书啊，里面有一些东西，我更想看他怎么实做，好，所以我最后来问问看他这门课程里面到底在讲什么。So you are launching a new online courses with set knowledge, right? So I would like to know who's going to be the ideal target audience for this course, and what will students learn from it?
Yeah, it's the reason I'm in Taiwan. So I'm really glad that I've been invited to do this course. Not only because it enables me to travel through Taiwan, but also because it allows me to sort and present the outcome of about 7 years of experience working with clients, teaching the system in a structured manner. So I know nowadays much better who can profit from the system and how to explain the ideas so different groups can adjust it to their own needs. And we narrowed it down to 4 groups. And I mentioned the different note types, and we believe that each group puts a different emphasis on a different type of notes. Okay. So first of all, there are creatives, and they obviously need to put the emphasis on the fleeting notes because they have inspirational ideas they need to jot down quickly, but need all the other note types to capture them in a way that it really can become something like an output, that they can process them and the ideas don't get lost.
Right.
Then we have the knowledge workers, which professionals, which seem to be the biggest group of interest for the system. And they might put the emphasis on project notes, but at the same time spend a lot of time in the permanent note section where they build longer-term ideas. And they, from my experience and from the feedback I received, they especially value being able to retrieve insight from old projects for newer projects. And that is important when you pitch an idea to a client. That can be important when you prepare a presentation and don't want to go through the hassle of going through your whole archive, but having your idea sorted in a way that it's easy to retrieve. Then the classic audience, of course, are students and academics for which the book originally was written. They might put the emphasis as students who are still learning on literature notes, where it's more about capturing and elaborating on ideas of others, or more senior researchers who spend more time in the permanent notes section developing their own ideas. But every group, knowledge workers, creatives, students, researchers, they all use all 4 types of notes, just with a different emphasis, because you always need a place to bring your own ideas forward. And even if you're a learner learning a new subject, it is about turning other people's ideas into something that you make it of your own. So you can actually do something with it, not just knowing something, but it's about doing something with the information you're learning. And I think that's basically captures it. It's all about making a bridge between information that is out there, turning it into your own, and doing something with it, with the idea of producing some kind of output. But output can be all kinds of things. It can be the presentation to your boss. It can be the examination preparation. It can be the book you're writing or the course you're creating or the artwork, the script you're writing. So people adjust it to your needs. But these 4 groups, I feel, are the ones the system is most suited for.
Okay, great. Very, I believe this is very logic, very structured, framework for all these 4 kind of learner, right?
Yeah. Well, good. The idea is to give them something that is concrete enough to put it into practice, but not putting them in a cage, so to speak. But where the emphasis on understanding what the system is about, what the principles are, so they have the freedom to adjust it to what they actually need in the daily note-taking rituals.
That's wonderful expression. I think everybody gonna love it. 刚刚我问他说，他跟知识卫星这次合作，重新创造了一个全新的线上课。那我问他这门课到底适合谁，然后这门课可以带来什么帮助？他简单讲了一句话，我觉得很有道理哈。他说，现在这个知识爆炸的时代，大家都反而是被像在一个牢笼里面哈，太多资讯了，被困在里面，不知道该怎么做。那他这门课的目的呢，就是把这些看起来很混乱、很复杂、很庞大的资讯，把它消化，变成我们自己的东西。然后呢，变成我们自己的东西之后呢，我可以用它来创作、来阐述，可能给我老板一个简报，或者我写一本书，或者我创作了一个线上课程。好，这个很重要。知识太多，如果不能变成我们的，那也没用。变成我们的，我们不能拿来融合，变成全新的创作，那也没用。他的课程，他刚刚说就是一个 bridge。像一个桥梁一样，把这三者，把知识、把我们跟创作这三个像一座桥，把它连起来。好，那它适合4种对象，看看是不是你是其中一种咯。第一个当然就是所谓的创作者，那这个就是像我这样的人啦。如果你是一个创作者，好，不管你是在企业或是个人，你要创作各种的图文各种的书籍，总之各式各样的媒体，你是自诩为一个创作者的话，那这里面他特别会强调刚刚讲的这个 fleeting note， 好，其中一种 note， 他会特别针对这种人强调，每一种角色4个 note 都要用，可是fleeting note 是特别好，创作者需要去善加了解的，然后也很适合所谓一般的专业工作者。那这里面就会谈到 project note， 我们要顾好客户啦，我们要完成公司交办的专案啦。这时候呢，这个方法特别会强调 project note 这一块。然后呢，针对如果你是学者，你是研究者，好，或者是第4种，你是学生，你正在学校学习，或是你正准备要考上证照，要学会一些知识，这个特别适合。好，这个也特别是因为我们刚刚也花了很多篇幅讲，它本身就是一个帮助你学习的一个 knowledge system， 所以有兴趣的话，欢迎大家可以了解一下这门课哈，我自己是觉得蛮值得学的。OK， Sönke, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
I learned a lot from this. Even I already read your book and I checked your interview on YouTube, but I still got very good insight from the conversation between us.
It was a pleasure.
It's awesome. I really hope you have a wonderful stay in Taiwan.
I already had it.
Great.
We'll have another couple of weeks, yeah.
Have you ever tried Taiwanese food, like a night market?
Yes, of course, on the first night.
Great. So we are looking forward to see more of your work in the future. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. 那我们在节目的说明栏有针对这个 Sönke 他这个全新的课程有更多详细的介绍，然后里面也有折扣码提供给我们大人学的伙伴，有还不错的折扣。如果今天的访谈你觉得你刚好就是我们这4个族群，而且你也有我们提到的痛点在知识爆炸的时代很难产出自己的洞见，那我觉得 Sönke 的跟知识卫星合作的这门课叫做申克阿伦斯，就他的名字，卡片盒笔记思考术，也许就是一个你今年最值得投资的知识商品。相信思考，勇于改变。希望你喜欢今天的访谈，我们下次见喽，拜拜。